From ghoulies and ghosties.
From ghoulies and ghosties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And
things that go bump in the night. Good Lord! Deliver us.
Deliver us.
Good evening, spooks and spookettes. Count Drahoon here, and this evening I have a review for you about a family-friendly monster movie that deals with family, grief, and visual arts. Starring Tony Hale, written and directed by Seth Worley, and distributed by Angel Studios. Let's get right into the heart of the matter, and hopefully you won't feel the need to drive a stake through it. Here is my review of Sketch. Tony Hale plays a widower by the name of Taylor Wyatt, who is balancing trying to keep the ship afloat, raising his 2 kids on his own after the sudden loss of his wife. His kids are Jack, played by Q Lawrence, and Amber, played by Bianca Bell. He is trying to be a present and effective father, while also trying to sell the family's house because unfortunately, that's where they spent most of their lives together as a married couple and raising the kids there. The memories are a little too painful, so he decides he wants to sort of pack it all away and start afresh somewhere else, though he hasn't quite figured out where. And of course, he has enlisted the help of his sister Liz, who is a realtor, played by Darcy Carter. Now, Jack seems to be getting along just fine, despite the circumstances, but Amber seems to be the one who is having the most trouble dealing with the loss of her mother. She has taken to drawing in her notebook some rather scary and crude images, particularly one image in which a creature with an interesting sword appears to stab one of her classmates by the name of Bowman. This particular drawing was discovered by Bowman, and of course he was a little bit freaked out on the bus when he found it, so he turns it in to his teachers, and there's sort of a parent-teacher conference that is called between the school counselor, Taylor, and Amber. The counselor, rather than chiding Amber for making these drawings, actually commends her because she is using her pain and her grief in a very constructive way. Instead of taking out her anger and rage on her fellow classmates, she's just putting it on the page and drawing it and not letting it fester, and ultimately not using unhealthy coping mechanisms. So she rewards her by giving her a new sketchbook, a therapeutic sketchbook for her eyes only. And of course, Taylor does make a promise to Amber that he won't actually go through it. More on that later. Meanwhile, late one night, Jack decides to go on a little adventure. He goes off into the woods on his property, where he finds a mysterious pond seemingly right in the center of the forest. Well, he accidentally trips and hurts his hand, and his phone falls into the pond. He happens to scoop it up with his hurt hand, and he realizes that not only is his cell phone working perfectly fine, but his hurt hand is healed. Jack will keep this later in mind when he gets into an argument with his sister at dinner. Of course, Taylor, trying to mediate it, is unsuccessful, and somehow a serving plate gets broken in the mix. Now, it seems a little strange for a young boy to be concerned about a broken serving plate, but this happens to be one of his mother's favorite dishes. So later on that evening, he takes the broken pieces of the serving plate, puts it in the pond, and the pond restores that serving plate. Now, remember what I told you earlier. Taylor swore that he wouldn't go through the journal. That is, of course, until one day when he's clearing out some things at the behest of Liz. She keeps telling him that he can't be at the house when she has people who are coming in to potentially buy it, but he always finds an excuse. But anyway, she tells him to hop to it, And as he's sort of gathering things, he accidentally spills his coffee on the sketchbook, which prompts him to look through it once he's in the car, and, well, he sees some things that he didn't want to see. So when she gets home later that afternoon, he's trying to play off as if he never saw anything, but of course Amber knows that he lied, and, well, it causes a whole row. Well, Jack is continuously experimenting with the pond, fixing things, recreating things, and he decides to tell Taylor what's going on with the pond. Well, Taylor isn't having any of it. He accuses Jack of making a really bad joke at a really sensitive time. But Jack and Amber later on get in a conversation about the pond. And Amber is a little on the fence, but might be a little bit more inclined to believe Jack, because it's not like Jack to make up things like this. So later on, they go to the pond, and he sort of demonstrates what he's talking about, and she believes him. Well, her sketchbook accidentally drops in the pond, and she retrieves it quickly, but the damage is done. The next day, Jack notices that there's yellow spots that are covering the windows. This makes him fearful that maybe some of the sketches in that book have somehow come alive. And of course, this theory is proven correctly when the bus picks them up from school, and they're heading towards school, and all of a sudden the bus is attacked by a giant, blue, fuzzy, googly-eyed spider monster, which is later called an eider. But this is a giant eider, and he is very angry and not happy. He knocks the bus off the road, knocking out the bus driver unconscious. And of course, Amber is the only person on the bus that knows exactly what to do. So she takes DeMarcus's iPod and puts it on some easy listening jazz music, which lulls the eider to sleep, and this gives the kids just enough time to make their way out of the damaged bus, until of course that jazz music switches off, and the next song in the playlist shuffle is some hardcore metal. So they have to run away, and they do just in the nick of time. So the kids more or less split up. Some of the kids go to this local office store, which was robbed the night before by one of the creatures that Amber drew in her sketchbook. It's actually the one that stabs Bowman in that grisly picture that got her in trouble. Now, Amber, Jack, and Bowman sort of split off from the rest of the group, and they go to the forest, and this is where they sort of explain to Bowman what's going on, and they strategize on how to stop this incoming invasion of monsters from the sketchbook, which may have been an interesting alternate title, if you ask me. So they go back to the house, and once they're there, they encounter more creatures, specifically the red tiny eiders. They may not seem all that intimidating, but trust me, if you're fighting off against 1,000 of those little buggers, you can't take them all at once. So they gear up, they put on some interesting armor and get some Nerf guns, or squirt Nerf guns full of water, and they take out the first wave of eiders. And so Amber gets another sketchbook from the house, and she knows that in order to combat these monsters, she has got to fight fire with fire and draw more things in order to snuff out the creatures. Now, while all of this is going on, Taylor and Liz are looking for Jack and Amber, and they seem to be a few steps behind them. They go to the bus, the kids aren't there. They eventually trace their steps to the store. They're not there either. They spend a lot of their time fighting the creatures from the sketchbook and having deep cathartic conversations. And Liz makes a very interesting point. She points out that Amber is the only one processing her grief correctly. She goes on and says that Taylor and Jack are just trying to pretend like they're okay and essentially pushing it down, when in reality things are not okay. And it's okay not to be okay. That's a tale as old as time. Men do that. The kids seem to have a bit of a cathartic moment themselves. We find out that Bowman's not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed, but he's not really a bully. Matter of fact, he kind of has a crush on Amber. He's just not He just has no clue how to talk to women. I hope that gets better with age. But anyway, they make their way back to the forest for the final showdown between the creature, who we find out later on is modeled after Amber, and Bowman. I love Bowman. He just charges headfirst to combat the creature, but he's quickly overrun. So finally, Amber, she uses her sketchbook to draw a weapon that Bowman had previously proposed in the movie, but it was, well, he was sort of laughed at because it is a ridiculous-looking weapon. But she draws it, and she uses it to successfully destroy the rest of the creatures. And Taylor and Liz get in the mix, and they're sort of fighting their way through some more monsters in the forest. But they finally meet up with the rest of the kids. Now, Jack had also grabbed his mother's ashes from the house after the fight with the Eiders. And you could tell that he's gone back to the pond because he's thinking about pouring the ashes in to hopefully resurrect his mother. And Taylor stops him and begs him to just let it be. That it's okay to grieve, and that there really isn't anything that can be done. That their mother really is gone, but that they're going to get through it together. And then that's when we find out that there was actually a hole made into the urn during the melee, and a lot of her ashes actually poured out on the ground, so even if he wanted to, he would be unable to resurrect his mother. And so the family decides to not sell the house, and they go on and they soldier through, and they live happily ever after. Now, before I review this movie, I do have to disclose a certain bias. I had a couple of friends that worked on this picture. Shunli Fong, who's the co-producer, and Christopher Kapp, who was a production assistant. Despite my bias, I feel like that this is the kind of movie that Disney used to could make back in, like, the early to late aughts. That would have done well enough in the box office to warrant more, these sort of family-friendly, supernatural kinds of films. But Disney is utterly incapable of making this kind of movie. And I feel like the folks at Angel Studios and Angel Studios distributed it, but the production company that made this film really hit it out of the park. This movie isn't a Christian film. It may have some Christian elements to it, and it's certainly marketed to the same kinds of folks that would watch Christian films. I mean, this is distributed by Angel Studios. It's the same company that put out the earlier seasons of The Chosen, as well as Sound of Freedom, which came out a couple of years ago, which, if you remembered, I had some very good things to say about Sound of Freedom. So this movie is sort of guilty by association, and I say that endearingly. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that the way that I felt about Sound of Freedom, which I viewed it as a milestone in this sort of category of movie, because lots of times Christian films are rightly disregarded by critics and normal moviegoers alike because there's just something lacking in those movies, whether it's not good dialogue, whether it's lower production value, whether it's questionable choices in acting. And I felt Sound of Freedom, again, not necessarily a Christian movie, but definitely a Christian-friendly movie. And it was a true story about a Christian man who used his connections as a former law enforcement officer to rescue kids from trafficking rings. This movie was a big step forward in that genre, or genre amalgamation, if that's what you want to call it, because the script was good, the story matter was very important, and some really solid performances by the cast in that picture, particularly from the star Jim Caviezel. And in that vein, although the subject matter for Sound of Freedom and Sketch are polar opposites, I would say that Sketch is also a milestone in this particular genre of film because it does the same thing. What I mean by that is this movie elevates the family-friendly genre, the Christian film genre, the right-leaning genre, whatever you want to call it. because this film, it's just a solid movie. I had so much fun watching it, and the jokes are very clever, particularly the jokes that are written in the dialogue for the kids. This is a solid ensemble cast of young actors, particularly from Kalen Cox, who plays Bowman. Bowman was my favorite character in the movie. I think Kalen has a very, very bright future ahead of him in acting and in entertainment. Really good performance. Not taking away from Q Lawrence or Bianca Bell, I thought that their portrayals were very fantastic, because they had to carry this film emotionally. Plenty of kudos to Tony Hale as well. His performance really, it was just a good performance in general, but particularly in this genre of film that has gotten a lot of bad publicity in the past for its lack of good performances. I think this one was extremely solid, because he balanced the comedy so well, but he struck a good chord also with the scenes that he had in which he was just a broken man. We could see very visibly how broken he was, just how desperately he was trying to find balance in this craziness of his life. I really enjoyed his performance in this movie. They all really hit it out of the park. And one thing I will say, granted, I don't know Seth Worley. I do know Shun Li fairly well, so I'm sure that he might have the same conclusion. This movie was made by Christians, but this was also made by Christians who appreciate film. And not just movies like God's Not Dead, or Do You Believe, or The War Room, or any of those films. These guys actually know how to tell a story and to make a good movie. And unfortunately, that is kind of lacking in that particular genre. And it's lacking in Hollywood. So, so standards are pretty low in this day and age in mainstream filmmaking, that all you have to do is just to be better than the competition. And Sketch is most definitely better than the competition. This is one of my favorite movies of the year. I don't know where I would rank it just yet. Well, I say that. I'm going to go ahead and put it in my top 3, for sure. Really enjoyed this movie. And also, before I forget, for a family movie, the monster effects were pretty neat. I knew what I was getting myself into in the theater, but I was just really impressed about the creature designs because, well, for one thing, I know I harp on CG a lot, and I generally don't like it most of the time. I will say it probably would have been a little difficult to make the kinds of creatures in this movie from practical effects. And what I mean by that is I actually think that the CG sort of worked to their benefit because, I mean, they looked like drawings. I mean, they looked like flimsy drawings from a young girl, and I think it was perfect. I think they did a great job. And even though those creatures weren't particularly scary, they were definitely memorable. And that's the most important part, I think. So to me, this is what makes a solid monster movie. We got memorable creatures, and we happen to have some good laughs and good performances along the way. So Seth Worley did a great job. I consider myself a fan now, so I'll be on the lookout for more films of his. I hope he gets back into this particular genre, though. I'd like to see what else he does with other kinds of monsters, if he ever gets the opportunity. But anyway, so that is my review of Sketch. Did you happen to see the movie? What did you think? Leave a comment below. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to Count Drahoon Presents so that you can get notifications for future videos just like this. Well, that's all the time I have this evening, but thanks again for tuning in. Always remember that as far as things go, when things go bump in the night, there are such things.
Ghoulies and ghosties.
From ghoulies and ghosties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And long-legged beasties. And things that go bump in the night. Good Lord! Deliver us.